when I told my mentor that I was getting to do this talk, he lit up like a proud dad. He was like, "Way to go, Jerome. What are you going to talk about?" I said, "Well, I'm going to talk about dinner parties." His smile dropped instantly. He said the word insipid. With all that's going on in the world, Black Lives Matter, police brutality, mass incarceration, poverty, and you're going to use your spotlight to talk about a dinner party. Jerome, you disappoint me. Now, when your mentor says you've disappointed him, you take that kind of thing to heart, you know? And usually I would have listened and changed my act accordingly. But this time I couldn't, and let me tell you why. Dr. King said, just weeks before his assassination, riots are the language of the unheard. I believe that much of the upheaval and tension, both internal and external, that's happening in our country is happening because we are disconnected. We're disconnected from ourselves, and we're disconnected from one another. And there's an easy, almost primal way of changing that, and that's breaking bread together. Now, if you have children, you probably know this. You know, researchers and psychologists have always promoted the benefits of family dinner. As a matter of fact, family dinner, the frequency of family dinner is the best predictor of your child making A's and pretty much being the best kid in the neighborhood. But what they don't talk about is the benefit of adults sharing meals with one another. I don't have any scientific evidence. My opinion is based on clinical observations and my own personal experience, but I say this without reservation. If you break bread rightly, if you do it with the right people, if you do it frequently enough, you won't ever have to buy another self-help book, take another psychotropic drug. I'll even go out on the limb and say that a dinner party will save your life. Now, when I moved here a few years ago and started getting invited to dinner parties, I was excited because I was trying to build my community. And you know, dinner parties are serious business to a particular segment of the population. And so I thought, I've made the cut, you know. But I quickly realized that making the cut wasn't what it was all cracked up to be. You know, those first parties, dinner parties, were painfully inauthentic and stale and pretentious. And I thought, you know, I would leave. Was it me? Was it them? You know, of course, I've had enough good therapy to know that part of it had to be me. I mean, I knew how to gush over people's china pattern and ask, is this family? And, you know, talk about how much money somebody paid for their house. Or the worst was trying to sound smart and paraphrasing Maureen Dowd, whatever she wrote that morning, and try to make it my own, you know? So it was me connecting, showing well, but not connecting well. The thing that it did for me, though, those experiences really helped me understand what was going on with my patients who would be so stressed out, just freaked out about going to dinner parties, because dinner parties bring up so many complex emotions. You know, on one hand, you're really excited about being invited to the Johnsons, and then on the other hand, you're dreading it and almost panicking over it because you don't want to spend another night engaged in meaningless conversation or listening to the same boring, rehearsed stories, or even worse, telling the same boring rehearsed story about your own life because it makes you feel dead inside, you know? So none of this sat well with me. I would whine to my best friend. I'd say, I don't know what I'm going to do, how I'm ever going to make friends here. And she challenged me. She's like, look, bro, do something about it. You're a psychologist, change it. She's a marketing mastermind. And together we came up with this dinner party revolution. Well, it never got picked up, by Oprah magazine or anything, but I did learn a lot. And one thing that I learned, the first thing that I learned was that modern relationships, modern lifestyle, and success makes it really difficult to have relationships with depth. It's not you, it's not me, it's success that causes this distress. I mean, we're all successful people here, and we've all seen how success disconnects us in a number of ways. We're more fixed on our digital screens than the faces of loved ones. We're pursuing careers that we have to leave our community behind for. We're ingraining in our children that homework is the new supper, and that it's more important than human relations. We're using busy as the new status symbol and becoming better human doings than human beings. And all of these are really disturbing trends because they take us away from loving and belonging. And as Maslow asserted in his hierarchy of a needs pyramid, loving and belonging are essential, are precursors to self-actualizing. You might get all the bucks, but you do not get to have the bang unless you have your people in place. And yes, these are first world problems, but they still leave us feeling like we're living socially on less than $1 a day. Now, I'm not down on sex or anything like that. My greatest sin is shallowness. But I do know this. You were not born wanting to win a Grammy or to win a Pulitzer, and you certainly weren't born wanting to be skinny. You were born wanting two things: food and belonging. And a dinner party is the most accessible, it's the easiest way to bring those two elements together. And no, you don't have to have a dinner party to have social connection or to assuage your distress. You can hike together, you can golf together, you can even volunteer together. But just as oil keeps an engine from locking up and leaving you stranded on the side of the road, food is the fuel for social connection. Food signals to the inner child that you're with your people and it's safe to bond. Breaking bread with others allows the oxytocin to flow and taps those deep brain structures that say, drop your guard. Food and belonging, they go hand in hand. So, how do you have that so-called save-all, cure-all dinner party that'll save your life? You're doing keep doing what you're doing. You invite your great friends, you call a great caterer, or cook good food. You uncork your favorite bottles of wine so it can breathe if that's your thing. And you have fully committed to connecting well, not showing well. And then if you really want to make sure that opportunity for loving and belonging doesn't slip through your fingertips, I have 4 things I want you to do. 4 things that I wish I would have been doing about 10 years ago. Number 1, never go or host a dinner party empty-headed. You don't wait until your friends arrive to decide what you're going to cook. Well, then don't wing it on the conversation. Always generate some topics or questions before you get there to keep the conversation flowing. You know, I like to send links or pop psychology personality test ahead of time to ensure the likelihood of rich conversation. Now, let me tell you, your friends want to dive deeper. Just someone has to have the courage to initiate it. Number 2, drop your guards and listen up. We've seen enough of your perfect life on Facebook. You know, we don't need any more perfectness to compare our less than lives to. Sure, it's okay to talk about your recent travels and your favorite team's recent success, but then be willing to go deeper and share your imperfections and your inadequacies and your insecurities. When you start hearing people talk about their flaws, then connection's going down. And when you're listening, listen with an open heart, not so quick to rush back with a witty response or to whip out your phone and Google a solution. Remember, you decided you're going to connect well. You don't have to look good or sound smart. The greatest gift at this point, the greatest gift that you can bring to conversation is your curiosity and sincerity. Number 3, push the envelope, but don't go too far. You know, asking a really cute couple that you've never met if they are how they feel about an open marriage or polyamory, that's I assure you, is too far. So here is a trick that I like to use to make sure that you push the conversation in the interesting zone, but still in the safe zone. Instead of focusing on facts, focus on emotions. Instead of saying, what do you do for a living? Ask, what do you love or loathe the most about your work or your work day? You know, it takes some emotions to, some stickiness to keep that connection in place. And lastly, whenever you get invited, go, especially if you don't want to. We're trying to cultivate a social exercise here. And just like meditation and running, the hardest part is getting started. So here's my advice. Whenever you hear yourself about to decline or trying to wiggle a way out of it or anything like that, stop that. Stop that narrative and just decide to go. You might get sore at first in this habit of having a social workout, but it will pay off in the long run. And you know what else? If you're not getting invited, have your own dinner party. You initiate it. It doesn't have to be some elaborate social gala, just the minimum of 2 people and something to eat, food and belonging. You know, growing up in Memphis in an apartment that had seen its better days, there was a lot that was not right in my home. I had a mom that was obsessed with what everybody thought and a dad that did anything, and I mean anything he wanted without a second thought to what it looked like to anybody. And together, they screwed up a lot. Some would even say they screwed me up, and perhaps that's the subject of another talk. Where they absolutely nailed it, though, was dinner. When my mom said, "Go tell your daddy dinner's ready," everything stopped. Because dinner in my family was sacred. It was a time when no matter how much we messed up, no matter how broken we felt, all was forgiven and trust was restored, and I felt like the most important person in the room. With love and food dished up at the table, my ball-watching macho dad gave his blessings to my interest in ballet and successfully disguised what he thought that interest was really about. And my mom, with the second helping a meatloaf, sold me on the idea of being a CPA. She even bought me an adding machine, and I started pretending I was an accountant. That's the power of pork roast and cream corn on the same plate. Now, I didn't see the ballet through, and I bailed on accounting by junior year, but because I grew up in a family breaking bread with people that believed in me, I grew up thinking that I could do whatever I wanted to do, anything that I wanted to do. I grew up knowing how important food and belonging are to our well-being. It's true. It's true. Listen to this. With all that's going on in the world, we can't afford to isolate ourselves. We can't afford to keep our ears closed to those that need to be heard. We can't afford to be silent about those things that really matter. Wow, we need each other in the deepest way. Get back to the table. Get back to breaking bread. Get back to belonging. It'll save your life, and it might just save the world. Be peace, be love.